This week, we saw something we don't normally see. Just one thing. The roles were switched. We are used to seeing ads everywhere telling white people, I mean white people, that they are bad and evil. Yes, we hear that every single day. But this week, Scott Adams stepped out of line and he switched the roles around. And in response, he lost his whole career. Also in the news, we have LA removing 1.2 million people from the voter rolls, MSNBC standing up for the little guy, Pete Buttigieg, the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. And last but certainly not least, we have info coming out that COVID came from the Institute of Virology in the Wuhan Institute. No, the media isn't mad at that, but they are mad at how the right is, quote, seizing the newly found truth. All of that and more on this episode of the Demetrios Araujo Show. Getting right into it, we actually have an article from The Federalist. We have lawsuit forces Los Angeles County to remove 1.5. Lawsuit forces Los Angeles County to remove 1.2 million ineligible voters from rolls. Los Angeles County, California confirmed that it has removed 1.2 million ineligible voters from its rolls thanks to a statement from the conservative advocacy group Judicial Watch. The group announced Friday Judicial Watch filed the lawsuit in 2017 on behalf of itself and 4 registered voters in Los Angeles County. Election Integrity Project California Incorporated, another project public interest group, was also part of the lawsuit. Under the agreement, Los Angeles had to send 1.6 million address confirmation notices to voters listed inactive on its voter rolls. According to the National Voter Registration Act, which requires states to maintain an accurate voter rolls, states and counties must remove from their voting rolls voters who do not respond to such mailers and do not vote in the next 2 federal elections. In its most recent progress report for complying with the settlement, Los Angeles told Judicial Watch that it had removed a total of 1.2 million ineligible voters from its rolls. Last year, the county revealed that 634,000 of its inactive voters hadn't voted in the last 10 years. Back in 2017, when Judicial Watch first filed its lawsuit, it argued that Los Angeles County had more registered voters than residents eligible to register, in the highest number of inactive registrations of a single county in the country. According to the data from the United States Election Assistance Commission, at the time, voter registration for the country was 112% of its adult citizen population. Quote, "It's long overdue. Voter cleanup of 1.2 million registrations in Los Angeles County is a historic victory and means California elections are less at risk for fraud," said Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton in a statement. Quote, "Building on this success, Judicial Watch will continue its lawsuits and activism to clean up voter rolls and to promote and protect cleaner elections. This isn't the first lawsuit of its kind. This isn't the first lawsuit of its kind by Judicial Watch. New York City recently removed 441,083 ineligible voters from its voter rolls after reaching a settlement with the conservative advocacy group. North Carolina has removed more than 430,000 ineligible residents from its rolls due to a similar lawsuit, and Kentucky agreed to do the same in response to the lawsuit. The Public Interest Legal Foundation is another good government group that had filed lawsuits to compel states, including Michigan and Pennsylvania, to clean up their voter rolls to guard against potential election fraud. And I completely agree with this. If you have not voted in the last 2 federal elections, which is 8 years of you not voting, then you should not even be registered to vote, because what's the point? There is no point. Moving on with the next article, we actually have a Daily Wire article. We actually have USA Today and other newspapers drop Dilbert over creator Scott Adams' racially charged comments. Now, if you do not know what Scott Adams said, now I can see where he's coming from. I do not agree with what he said, but I can see where he's coming from. Like I said, if you switch to roles, then it's completely okay to say something like this. So, Adams in a video joked that he's been identifying as black for some time, but must have accidentally joined a hate group. Based on a recent poll, the poll, which surveyed 1,000 people, showed that 53% of black people agreed with the statement, "It's okay to be white," leaving 47 unable to say if they agree. So 47% of black people, according to this 1,000 people polled, say that it's not okay to be black. So right here, this is where the controversy begins. After he says this poll, he says, well, based on the current way things are going, the best advice I will give white people is to get the hell away from black people. Just get the F away. Adams continued, after commenting further on race relations and crime, whether you have to go, just get away. Wherever you have to go, just get away, because there's no fixing this. This can't be fixed. So I don't think that it makes any sense for any white citizen of America to try to help black citizens anymore. It doesn't make sense. There is no longer a racial impulse. So I'm going to back off on being helpful to black people because it doesn't seem like it pays off. Adams on Saturday morning reacted to backlash online. So he said, a lot of people are angry at me today, but I haven't heard anyone disagree. I make two main points. Treat everyone as an individual, no discrimination. Avoid any group that does not respect you. Does anybody think that is bad advice? Is it racist to avoid racists who are the same race as each other? Or is it only racist if the racists you are avoiding are white? So, and he's making a pretty good point. If you look at MSNBC in the last year, if you look at CNN in the last year, if you look at any mainstream outlet at all in the last year, especially during the George Floyd situation, they were spitting in people's face. They were stomping on people's head. No, I'm saying specifically Chinese people in New York. They're just disrespecting white people. White people all around. So if you go into this and you actually see, if you switch the roles, maybe the media is going to like that a little bit better. So based on the current way things are going, the best advice I could give black people is to get the hell away from white people. Just get the F away. Adams continued after commenting further on the race relations and crime. Wherever you have to go, just get away, because there's no fixing this. This cannot be fixed. So it makes sense for it makes sense for any black citizen of America to try to help. It does not make sense for any black citizen of America to help white people anymore. It does not make sense. There's no longer a racial impulse, so I'm going to back off on being helpful to white America because it doesn't seem to pay off. So if you switch the roles, you're giving MSNBC coverage, you're giving the Huffington Post coverage, you're giving your career in your hands. That's what you get if you switch the roles. But since he did not switch the roles, and he said, what he perceives as the truth based off of this poll, then there you go. You get a controversy. So moving into the next article from CNN, we have a COVID lab leak theory. What we've learned in the last 3 years is that we cannot trust you. So we're not going to be reading this article. Moving on to the next article from CNN, we actually have First Lady on Biden's plan to run in 2024. I'm for it. Of course you are, because you're an abusive spouse of the President of the United States. Of course you don't care if he lost his mind years ago. Moving with the article, First Lady Jill Biden did not hesitate when asked if there was any chance her husband would not run for a re-election in 2024. Not in my book, she told CNN in an interview Saturday morning during a 5-day trip that saw her visit Liberia in Kenya. I'm all for it, of course. Her comments are the last indication that President Joe Biden is on the verge of launching a re-election bid, even as a formal declaration has not been yet made. President Biden is well known for engaging in extended deliberations when it comes to a major political decision. The First Lady emphasized that it's ultimately a decision that's up to her husband and left an opening for him to decide against a run as well. It's Joe's decision, she said, and we support whatever he wants to do. If he's in, we're in. If he wants to do something else, we're there too. The president joked in an interview with ABC News last week that he had to call his wife to find out whether he was running in 2024. He stressed that his intention has been from the beginning to run, but there are so many other things that we have to finish in the near term before I can start a campaign. Of course, like fixing the economy that you ruined, fixing, the Afghanistan situation where you left Americans to die there, the Ukraine situation where you don't even have a plan to fix that situation yet. But that's hard work for you. You don't even know how to get up the stairs. We should figure that out first. Joe Biden told CNN that the president's surprise trip to Ukraine last week and domestic issues have kept him busy in the recent days, adding that, quote, nothing's been planned yet as of yet. Critics have pointed out to the 80-year-old president's age as a factor in another run, but Biden would be 82 by 2024 inauguration and 86 by the end of a potential second term. But the First Lady said that his trip to Ukraine showed that he still has energy for another potential presidential campaign and another 4 years in office. Quote, how many 30-year-olds could travel to Poland, get on a train, go 9 more hours, go to Ukraine, meet with President Zelensky, she said. So look at the man. Look at what he's doing. Look what he continues to do each and every day, going up the stairs and all. Joe Biden said that he's not frustrated by all the, quote, will he or won't he speculation and won't confirm whether a decision on a 2024 run has been made or when it will be announced. I think that he has much bigger fish to fry in that aspect, so I don't think that he should be focusing on running yet. I think that he should be focusing on fixing America, and so he has something to stand on. Moving on with the next article from MSNBC, we have Netflix's latest villain, Alex Murdaugh, did not help himself by testifying. Of course he did not, because he's guilty as hell, allegedly. There's a scene in the 1997 movie, The Devil's Advocate, when Keanu Reeves, former small-town lawyer turned big-time city legal gunslinger, courtesy of Satan in the flesh, Al Pacino, delivers a, quote, very objectionable and argumentative opening statement to the jury in his client's murder trial. Reeves' character bluntly tells the jury, quote, I don't like Alexander Cohen, referring to his client. I don't think that he's a nice person. I don't expect you to like him. He's been a terrible husband. He's cheated the city, his partners, his employees. I'm going to tell you some things during the course of the trial that are going to make you like him even less. But it's not a popularity contest. It's a murder trial. I want one thing from you. That's all. One thing. I want you to ask yourself, is not liking this man reason enough to convict him for murder? We witnessed a real-life version of the scene play out in a South Carolina courtroom when accused double murder Alex Murdaugh took the stand in his own defense last week. It was further emphasized that an unflattering Netflix docuseries that delivered an unsparing amount of Murdaugh's characters, actions, and family legacy. As soon as he was sworn in to tell the truth, and nothing but the truth, Murdaugh immediately confessed to the jury that he had lied to the law enforcement, his family, and the world at large for 20 months, while denying that he was physically present on the scene of the double homicide of his wife and his son back in June 2021. Murdaugh tearfully explained that his addition to painkillers made him paranoid and caused him to lie to investigators, which is not an excuse, by the way, or originally claiming that he last saw his wife and son at dinner, and he was not at the dog kennels / crime scene. The bloody, violent night later, and only after video evidence release, he was in fact present at the scene. Did Murdaugh admit to his prior lies? Well, in yet another defense seemingly ripped down directly from the Devil's Advocate playbook, Murdaugh attorneys during 2 days' worth of direct examination and cross-examination allowed him to freely admit that he had reportedly lied to dozens of clients when he practiced law prior to being disbarred, as well as his law partners for whom he accused of stealing more than $9 million in diverted settlement funds over and over again. He acknowledged that he had represented those officials in cases often involving grievous personal injury or wrongfully death, and that he would steal the settlement funds to pay off for his lifestyle and drug addiction. At the end of each admission, Murdaugh told the jury that he knew what he had done was wrong and that he knew that he was stealing from his clients. When he did so, jurors left at the end of each day with confessions ringing in their ears. But he reportedly denied that he had murdered his wife and son. The decision to have a criminal defendant testify is not one that is easily made. The potential for disasters usually far outweighs any true benefit. Before murder was disgraced and disbarred, he had a long career as a trial lawyer, likely leading him to believe he was smart enough to be and experienced enough to outwit and maneuver the prosecutor. But just like the saying, doctors make the worst patients, lawyers can make the worst clients in their own defense. It should be noted that murder, unlike other witnesses in this case, was also able to sit through the entire multi-week trial thus far, including mostly importantly in the presentation of the prosecution's case in chief. Before he made any decision to take the stand, in my opinion, that direct window into all of the evidence presented thus far must have served as a huge factor in the calculus to have him testify in a criminal trial in which he was looking at a mandatory minimum sentence of 30 years to life in prison without parole, should he be convicted for the murders. In the case at hand, murderer's choice to make the witness stand to a de facto confession booth also creates even more potential for a conviction for the homicides, because the jurors could, in fact, decide that because they did not like him, he must be guilty. I submit that in doing so, the jurors wouldn't be abiding by their duties as jurors to follow the law. But the reality is that regardless of what the law requires them to consider, it's basic human nature to judge, and jurors do exactly that. They judge the credibility and trustworthiness of any witness who testifies in court. Murder has already delivered a win for the presentation when it comes to a complete eradication of trustworthiness, and thus far, and therefore credibility, by admitting that he has built a house of cards on lies. By testifying in his own defense, he, not his counsel, has asked these jurors to agree with him that he might be a thief and a drug addict, but he is not a murderer. With murder looking in the jurors directly in the eyes, just like he looked his former clients and partners in the eyes when he lied to them, and testifying that he is confessed a liar, he runs the risk of tainting the entire wall of his credibility. And this is when CNN is being, partisan here. They're obviously one-sided. I think that it's supposedly very, very clear that he apparently killed his wife and his son. I don't want to say for sure, obviously, because we don't know for sure. But apparently, it looks very, very clear cut, apparently. Moving on to the next article from NPR, we actually have Biden's loan relief faces its biggest test yet at the Supreme Court. Well, if Joe Biden's, student loan forgiveness cannot make it through the Supreme Court, then it can't be a law. So it's done. So the Supreme Court, make the right decision, because you know what's supposed to happen in the United States. Moving on with the article, a handful of Republican-dominated states will ask the Supreme Court on Tuesday to permanently block the Biden administration's student loan forgiveness program. The states contend that the president exceeded his legal authority when he implemented a program to cancel up to $20,000 in debt for people holding federal student loans. While the Biden administration is aggressively defending the program in court, the president did not announce the program until August 2022, and then only under pressure from the left wing of his own party. Ultimately, the administration concluded that it did not have the authority to enact such a loan forgiveness plan under a law called the HEROES Act. Passed by Congress after the 9/11 attacks, the law is meant to ensure that the federal student loan borrowers will not be economically clobbered in a national emergency or a war disaster. The law specifically says that when the president declares such an emergency, the Secretary of Education has the power to waive or modify any statutory or reasonable regulatory provision governing student loan programs. During the pandemic, Trump and Biden administrations both invoked the law to pause student loan payments until without penalties. The Biden plan goes farther. It provides economically disadvantaged borrowers can qualify for as much as $20,000 in cancellation of their student loan debt. Those earning more money, up to $125,000, could qualify for as much as $10,000 in debt relief. Already, 16 million student loan borrowers has been approved for some loan forgiveness, 90% of them earning less than $75,000, according to the administration. The Biden plan, however, has not yet paid out any money because two lower courts have put the program on hold, sending the case to the Supreme Court. On Tuesday, the justices will hear expedited arguments in a challenge to the Biden plan brought by 6 states: Missouri, Nebraska, Iowa, Arkansas, Kansas, and South Carolina. The legal argument. The merits of the case are fairly straightforward. Does the 2003 law, known as the HEROES Act, give the President and the Secretary of Education the power to authorize federal student loan forgiveness? According to the University of Texas law professor Stephen Valdek, yes. Who consulted informally with the White House on the case. He says the words of the statute are clear and expansive. Quote, this is a stunningly broad, giant grant of authority from the Congress to the Secretary of Education, Valdek says. The plain text of the statute is not vague when it talks about the Secretary's power to waive or modify any statutory or regulatory provision applicable to programs like federal student aid. But Case Western University law professor Jonathan Alder says waiving or modifying loan requirements is not the same thing as canceling the obligation to pay back some of or all of the loan. Alder concedes the statute's language is broad, but he says that it is likely not explicit enough for the very conservative Supreme Court of today. Quote, it's currently fair to claim that the Supreme Court is putting a thumb on the scale in the way of the statutory language that this is being interpreted, Alter says, adding that the court, when in doubt, assumes Congress did not give any agency a power if we have to argue about it. Well, we read the statute this way, or we read the other. The Department of Education has already lost, he says. Far-reaching consequences. Whichever way the court rules in its decision, we will have huge practical effects for millions of people with outstanding federal student loans, particularly borrowers who have lower incomes. That said, the case could have an even greater impact in the justice's decision that the states don't have the right to sue at all because they can't show that they have suffered any concrete harm. In recent years, Republicans have reportedly parlayed lawsuits into a forceful tool to get the conservatives to block the Biden administration's policies. Okay, so this is when NPR gets very, very one-sided, obviously, because you have a media bias, but NPR does not want to admit that they have a media bias because they take millions of dollars out of our tax-paying money every single year. Now, this is the thing. Now, the United States government does not have the right to cancel any student loans up to $10,000 each. Let's just say that millions of people signed up. $10,000 each times 60. That's a lot. That's billions and billions of dollars that the United States has to pay just because you want to go to school now. And yes, you can say that other countries do this, and you can say that other countries have this and other countries have that, but other countries do not have the size and the citizenship of the United States of America. 350 million people are a lot of people. Moving on with the next article from NPR, in East Palestine, who shows up isn't necessarily a sign of who's helping. Excuses. And this is exactly what NPR wants to stand up for its Democrat parties. So, there has been a train wreck in East Palestine, Ohio. Wow, we already knew this. One substance, a train derailment and subsequent chemical burn-off has potentially jeopardized the health of understandably injured residents of the town. The other, political. As President Biden took what was by all accounts a daring trip to Ukraine as Russia's war on the country was heading towards its one-year anniversary, Republicans were criticizing Biden for going there instead of East Palestine. Yes, of course. So you're going to make a political play, a political theater by going to Ukraine, but you don't want to go to your own country in Ohio. How about you look at where your priorities are and then look at them again and keep thinking about where your priorities are until you have America first. Seeing a political opportunity, former President Trump and a cadre of other conservatives descended on the small town of fewer than 5,000 residents. Trump handed out his campaign hats, Trump-branded water, and Trump-branded insults of the Biden administration. Of course he would, and that's a good thing. Then, under political pressure, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg made his way there too, met with local leaders, and offered his own rejoinders for the former president. But while political leaders are mired in short-term politics, people in the town are concerned about the long-term effects of the air they breathe and the water they drink. Of course, because the federal government wanted to burn all of the trains, even though there was only 2, maybe 3 train cars that was connected to the train that had toxic chemicals in them. So why are you burning all of them? They polluted and destroyed the small town of East Palestine of Ohio, and they don't even care. The federal government, they don't care at all. But of course, Joe Biden's going to sit here and make the excuse, oh, the reason why I didn't go is, we were there. I think I was there. I was zooming around. Like, you're stupid. A former president trying to look like the current one, of course, and he's doing a better job than that. But okay, I already had enough from NPR. Moving on with the next article from Fox News, we actually have, let's see, CCP government intentionally released COVID-19. Quote, all of the world, Chinese virologist says. Now, let's see here. Okay. Moving with the article, a Chinese virologist who sounded the alarm in early 2020 about where the coronavirus came from said Monday that the United States has reached a milestone in achievement after a classified intelligence report from the Energy Department reportedly found a virus most likely originated in a Chinese lab. Dr. Li Mingjian told Tucker Carlson tonight in September 2020 that the Chinese government intentionally manufactured and released the COVID-19 virus, leading to the nationwide shutdowns and deaths. Host Tucker Carlson asked Yin on Monday if she still believes the virus was intentionally released nearly 3 years ago after the pandemic started. Quote, of course, it was not an accident, she reported. Maybe for people who don't have this kind of biosafety and lab 3 or 4 experience on coronavirus, maybe it's easy for them to accept the accident lab leak. However, I'm a scientist working in a research lab using coronavirus. And I can tell you, based on the print protocol and also the other surveillance system, it would be impossible for a lab leak to accidentally happen in such a lab and cause the Wuhan outbreak and also a pandemic, Yun said. So definitely now we just reached the first step. It was from China's lab, and we need to pursue the truth of origin. We need to keep going on. Carlson suggested the Chinese government unleash COVID to destroy Western economies and elevate their own position globally. Yun said based on the evidence that she had seen and the source that she had spoken to, the virus was intentionally brought out from the strict lab and released in the community. However, I don't think the outbreak in Wuhan was intentional. I would say that it was because the CCP government and the military scientists have underestimated the transmissibility. Then she added, that's why finally it got out of control and the coast was a local outbreak. Wherever we should know that the CCP government intentionally let it go all over the world to kill millions of people all over the world. Yun was a respected doctor who specialized. Yun is a respected doctor who specialized in virology and immunology at the Hong Kong School of Public Health before fleeing in April 2020. After she began looking into the growing number of cases coming out of mainland China that involved human-to-human transmission, she said that she reported her findings to her supervisor on January 16, but that's when he allegedly told her to keep silent and be careful because she's going to die. He warned me before, don't touch the red line. Yun said, referring to the government, we will get in trouble and we will be disappeared. Of course, because if you go against the government of China, the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, in other words, then they will make you disappear. Moving with the next article, we actually have a Breitbart article. Agenda accuses Western governments of pushing a pro-gay agenda. Of course, look at June, look at July, look at today, or I would say March 1st, because today is March 1st. It's actually a sad thing, a sad day in history that we're not pushing being normal anymore. We want to push being something different. Oh, go outside of the box, be you, be... Okay, listen. there's a certain amount of you can be, or you're just not being anybody at this point. If you're just fluid and you have nothing and you look like a potato like Demi Lovato used to look, it's just gross. Like, come on now. How about you have some respect for yourself? How about you continue what we've been doing for the rest of the year, or the rest of our life, or the rest of human civilization, and just be normal? Come on. You know what normal is? Just be normal. Agenda is resisting intentionally pro-gay propaganda by putting forward new legislation to protect its cherished values and culture, according to Anna Among, the Speaker of the Algerian Parliament. Among has pledged to the country that a bill would be introduced as soon as possible to deal with the homosexuality and lesbianism. She wrote on Twitter, "We shall jealously protect and our cherished values and culture." Quote, "We do not appreciate the money they have been bringing to destroy our culture," said Among, a Catholic, on a video clip posting it on her Twitter feed. "We do not need their money. We do not need their culture. We do not need their money. We need our culture," she said, in reference to Western governments and aid agencies promoting a pro-homosexuality agenda in Nigeria. The United States has played a central role in pushing a pro-gay agenda, contrary to Algerian values. In her video clip, Among challenged United States Ambassador in Nigeria, Natalie Brown, by name. Brown has publicly claimed that the pro-LGBT community is among the populations frequently stigmatized across all levels of society in Nigeria. In July 2022, Brown gave an address to the LGBT adversary group Universal Coalition of Affirming Africans Nigeria, in which she spoke of the benefits of diversity as well as the importance of the inclusion of LGBT people in all that we do. Holding up to American Pride Month is an example of a positive reinforcement. Consistent with guidance from the Biden administration, I flew the rainbow flag just under the United States flag at my residence at all the embassy facilities, Brown said. "I did this to underline our support for a community that has long been marginalized both in public and private life, deprived of its human rights, and subjected to abuse, emotional, physical, sexual, economic, and physiological. Despite our best efforts to advocate for equal treatment of sexual minorities and same notable processes in this effort, there's still much more room for improvement," she said. "Each of us, irrespective of who we love, has a right to determine our destiny and to live healthy and fulfilling lives," she said. "Unfortunately, when it comes to LGBT persons and their rights, our institutions can be intolerant or even fearful when it can lead to perpetration and condemning of violence and hateful acts," she said. Many African political religious leaders reacted strongly to efforts by the Obama administration to promote a pro-homosexual agenda in African nations. According to the New York Times, the Obama government invested more than $700 million into supporting the gay agenda globally, and more than half that money in targeting sub-Saharan Africa. Following Obama's trip to Africa in 2015, a number of African bishops as well as other leaders accused the president of Western cultural imperialism and requested that the president learn to respect Africa's values rather than imposing his own. In the same way that we do not try to impose our culture on anyone, we also expect that people should respect our culture in return. A Nigerian activist, while gay rights activists complained that a new law would mean that more harassment and discrimination, in point of fact, there has never been a conviction in Nigeria for consensual sodomy since the country's independence from Britain in 1962. Okay, so I completely agree with this. You don't have to make a law saying that it's okay, but you also don't have to have a law saying that it's necessarily bad. What's the big deal? Then what do you want? Oh, you just want this. Okay, when you just want this, then you want to go a step farther. Oh, I just want this though. No, now you want to go a mile further. No, we're going to give you this and that's it. You're going to like it. Moving on with the next article from the Daily Wire. we actually have China response to United States Energy Department's revised Wuhan lab theory leak. Moving with the article, China officials said Monday that certain parties should stop politicizing the origins of COVID after the United States Department of Energy assessed the virus likely leaked from a laboratory in Wuhan, China. During a press conference, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Niu Ning said that the origins tracing of the virus should be referred back to March 2021 report published by China in the World Health Organization officials, which concluded with an extremely unlikely verdict about the lab leak theory. Certain parties should stop rehearsing the lab leak narrative, stop smearing China, and stop politicizing origins tracing, Ning said. After defending the joint WHO-China report she claimed was received by the international community, United States Energy Department officials revised a previous document that judged with low confidence that the virus has leaked from a Chinese laboratory. The Wall Street Journal reported on Sunday that the new classified intelligence recently provided to the White House and key members of Congress showed Energy Department officials shifted its assessment of the pandemic origins in an updated 2021 report by Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines' office. The updated classified report also affirms that the view of COVID did not stem from a biological weapons program. A lack of a definitive animal source has led researchers and United States officials to suspect a leak from Wuhan's espionage of laboratories, the Wall Street Journal noted. The National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby on Monday said regardless of what the source is of COVID, that scientific research can still occur, needs to occur, in a safe and secure manner. United States National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan did not confirm or deny the report to CNN, citing a directive from President Joe Biden to investigate the origins of the pandemic. President Biden specifically requested that the national labs, which are part of the Energy Department, President Biden specifically requested that the national labs, which are part of the Energy Department, he brought into the assignment because he wants to put every tool at use to be able to figure out what happened here, Sullivan adding the intelligence community holds a variety of views. A number of them have said that they don't have enough information, he said. President Biden ordered a 90-day United States intelligence review into the virus origin in 2021, which reported that officials in his administration found the lab leak theory as credible as the national emergence theory. Following the inquiry, Biden criticized China's transparency and pledged a further investigation. The spokesperson for Energy Department did not disclose any details of the report, but told the Journal it continues to support the thorough, careful, and objective work of our intelligence professionals in investigating the origins of COVID, as the president directed. The National Intelligence Council and 4 agencies, which the Journal says officials refuse to identify, still believes with low confidence in the natural emergence theory. FBI officials assessed in 2021 with moderate confidence that the pandemic likely began with a lab leak. The Central Intelligence Agency and 2 other agencies reportedly still have not made a determination. United Nations Health Agency officials only referred to the 2021 WHO China report, which Newsweek reported Beijing officials appointed half of the researchers on the mission, restricted the team's access to critical data, and blocked the WHO attempts to conduct a Phase 2 study that included a review of Wuhan surroundings. China officials have reportedly denied the blame, fending off assertions from various people, including former President Donald Trump. But a lack of cooperation from China led to the WHO investigation into COVID origins hitting a snag at a key juncture. According to Johns Hopkins University and Medicaid medicine data, more than 6.8 million people diagnosed with COVID have died since the earliest cases have been reported in the Wuhan late December 2019. 2019,